On M6117, the planet where the Hunter-Gratzner ship crashes in the 2000 film Pitch Black, the surface is not empty by accident. This is not a natural desert or a world that never hosted life, but a planet that lost its ecosystems because something wiped them out. However, it was not something cosmic, but an organism that does not hesitate, does not negotiate, and does not forgive. And when darkness covers the sky and the world is swallowed by shadows, that organism rises from the depths like a plague, leaving behind only death and a surface covered in bones. These creatures are known as Bioraptors, although in the film they mostly function as nameless creatures that scream from the darkness, with large wings beating the air and with a violence so fast that there is no time to process what is happening. These creatures remain hidden underground and emerge only when the planet enters a period of total darkness. This event occurs approximately every 22 years, and it does not last minutes as it does on Earth, but months, and some sources even speculate it may last decades. This is a prolonged planetary eclipse caused by the alignment of several planets in the system, an alignment synchronized enough to block the light of a world that, the rest of the time, lives battered by several suns. This is important because bioraptors are predators that cannot tolerate light, since even exposure to a flashlight is enough to burn their skin. Intense light injures them, disorients them, and can even kill them. This extreme photophobia is not just an aesthetic detail, but their great biological weakness. The ecological impact of these creatures on the surface life of M6-117 is brutal, as they left the planet practically sterilized. The film shows this clearly when we see kilometers of desert covered by formations that look like dried tree trunks, but are actually the skeletal remains of creatures once known as cetaceans that, despite their name, roamed the planet's great deserts. It is unknown when it began, but the bioraptors fed indiscriminately, and in the end, no ecosystem remained intact. This detail is key because when food began to run out, the bioraptors began devouring each other. Canonically, the first thing that stands out is their morphology. These are creatures several meters long in their adult stage, with a slender, aerodynamic body designed for rapid movement, both on land and in the air. Importantly, these creatures are not birds, not mammals, and not reptiles, but something in between. A predator capable of moving efficiently underground, on the surface, and in the air. Their skin is thick like tanned leather and pale in tone due to their nocturnal nature. However, not all of their body has the same resistance. The film makes it clear that they can be injured and killed with conventional weapons if their weak points are attacked. One example of this is when Riddick manages to open the abdomen of one with his knife, proving that despite their intimidating appearance, they are still biological and vulnerable organisms. Their head is one of their most distinctive features, elongated, with a hard, bony structure, notably more resistant than the rest of the body. The mouth is filled with multiple rows of sharp teeth designed to tear and rip rather than chew. But the most important feature is the one that is missing. Bioraptors have no visible eyes. Instead of traditional vision, they use echolocation. On both sides of the head, they possess protrusions that house ultrasonic sensory organs that function like a sonar. By emitting sounds, they receive the echo and build a three-dimensional image of the environment in complete darkness. This system allows them to move with great precision in enclosed spaces and in flight. However, this advantage has a structural flaw. Due to the separation of their sensory organs, there is a blind spot directly in front of their mouth. Riddick discovers and exploits this, managing to kill one of them. In addition to echolocation, they have an extremely developed sense of smell and can detect blood at a distance. The film clearly suggests they show a special attraction to Jack when she is bleeding, confirming an advanced chemosensory system. Their limbs are also designed as weapons. They have extremely sharp claws on their hands, a retractable claw in the center of their palms, large membranous wings they can use both to fly and to support themselves while moving, and a forked tail with sharp tips capable of injuring, grabbing prey, or stabilizing them while running. Their blood is blue and thick. This suggests, although the film does not explicitly explain it, a respiratory system based on hemocyanin, a copper-rich protein, instead of iron-based hemoglobin like in humans. This detail is consistent with low-oxygen environments such as M6-117. All of their anatomy is oriented toward a single purpose: hunting with maximum efficiency in the dark, adapted to take advantage of a very specific phase in their world's planetary cycle. For this reason, when darkness covers M6117, the first to emerge are not the adults, but the infants. Canonically, in pitch black, we see that the smaller creatures come out first from the massive openings that connect to the underground system. They emerge in swarms or dense flocks that move like a single entity, and although individually they may not seem as dangerous as the adults, together they become a storm of living blades. Sharon Montgomery is the most brutal visual demonstration of this. When she encounters these creatures, she is lifted and torn apart within seconds, although her death was not a slow one. This behavior resembles that of locusts or piranhas. Then the adults arrive, larger, stronger, and more structurally developed. Their sensory organs are fully extended, their musculature is more defined, and their offensive capability is superior. Adults do not need the exclusive advantage of numbers, as they can hunt alone or in small groups. Riddick manages to kill one, but he does so with extreme effort, clearly establishing the difference in power between an average human, a Furian, and an adult Bioraptor. A fundamental point is their indiscriminate feeding behavior. Bioraptors do not distinguish between species and attack anything they detect as food, and when there are not enough external prey available, they resort to cannibalism. Additionally, they show no visible social hierarchy. This is not a theory because in the film we see the creatures devouring one another, adults consuming the smaller ones, and even adults attacking other adults. This behavior fulfills a dual biological function: population control and survival during long cycles of scarcity. Because the eclipse is prolonged, and during that period the surface becomes a massive feast, or at least it was when abundant life still existed. When the light returns, a cycle of approximately 22 years begins in which the creatures are once again confined underground, leading to phases of self-devouring, reproduction, and likely hibernation until the next period of darkness. We do not know how they reproduce, as the film does not show eggs or nests. However, we do see a vast system of underground caves, natural chimneys that connect to the surface, and a relatively numerous population. But the greatest mystery surrounding the Bioraptors is not their reproduction, but their weakness. Being extremely photosensitive creatures, they exist on a planet that orbits within a system of multiple suns. Even a flashlight can burn them, and intense light injures and can even kill them if they are exposed for too long. This raises the inevitable question: how could a species like this evolve in an environment with nearly constant illumination? Here we must separate what is canonical from speculation. Canonically, we know three things, which at the risk of being repetitive, must be stated for context. The planet M6117 is in the trinary system and receives a great deal of light and solar radiation for long periods. Every 22 years, an eclipse occurs that plunges the planet into total darkness for an extended time. Bioraptors live underground and emerge only when darkness dominates the surface. What the film does not explain is their evolutionary origin, but it does give us clear hints. First, the underground cave system. The natural chimneys and caverns we see do not appear to be small improvised burrows. They are massive, deep, and interconnected structures. This suggests that the planet's subsurface is more vast and complex than it appears. If a species evolved over millions of years in near total darkness, extreme photophobia would cease to be a defect and would instead become an evolutionary consequence. For example, in real terrestrial ecosystems, cave-dwelling species develop loss of pigmentation, reduction of eyesight, and extreme sensitivity to light stimuli. The Bioraptors display these characteristics, albeit taken to an extreme. Second, the eclipse is an evolutionary opportunity. If the darkness event repeats every 22 years and lasts months or decades, that creates a periodic ecological window. For most of the cycle, the surface is uninhabitable for them, but during the eclipse, the surface becomes free territory, without competition or other predators adapted to prolonged night. This repetitive pattern can generate enough selective pressure to favor a species specialized in exploiting that time window, something that also happens frequently on Earth. And third is the invasive hypothesis. This is a plausible theory within the canon, although not officially confirmed. The film does not explicitly state that the Bioraptors are native. It only suggests that they are responsible for the extinction of the native surface species. This opens the possibility that they were introduced accidentally or even as a biological weapon, either as a test or because someone needed to get rid of problematic organisms. Their efficiency in hunting, their inability to coexist with complex ecosystems, and their voracious behavior of completely sterilizing the environment reinforce this possibility. However, it is not necessary to resort to external engineering to explain their existence. A planet with an unstable geological history, orbital changes, or astronomical events can generate extreme cycles of light and darkness. If at some point the balance changed, for example by altering the orbital dynamics, a subterranean species could have found a periodic opportunity for expansion. In other words, at some point, there may have been a change in the planet's orbit that caused the light that kept these creatures contained to disappear for prolonged periods, like the eclipse, giving the Bioraptors the opportunity to emerge and develop further by hunting the surface creatures. The expansion did not have to be rapid, only constant. For many, this explanation is more plausible than the idea of a biological weapon. On Earth, we have already seen similar scenarios when invasive species arrive in ecosystems that are not prepared for them. The expansion of the lionfish in the Caribbean after its accidental introduction, the arrival of the European rabbit in Australia, or the Great American Biotic Interchange, when the union of North and South America allowed new predators to enter vulnerable ecosystems, caused real ecological collapses. The Bioraptors fit perfectly within that pattern, only amplified to a planetary scale. The final irony is that their evolutionary success may have condemned their own future. By eliminating all surface life on the planet, the Bioraptors became trapped in a cycle of population booms, followed by cannibalism and subterranean retreat that may gradually be reducing their population. Each eclipse represents an opportunity for expansion, but also a progressive reduction of available resources. Their cinematic design also explains why they still work so well today. These creatures were designed by Patrick Totopoulos, but their on-screen presence did not rely solely on CGI. In fact, Pitch Black used a combination of techniques: full-scale animatronic creatures built by John Cox's Creature Workshop, miniatures, and digital effects created by Double Negative. This mix was important because the Bioraptors were not only computer-generated models, but physically existed on set. Full animatronic versions were built with latex skin over internal fiberglass structures, operated by several puppeteers who controlled the head, jaw, arms, and claws using cables and rods hidden in the darkness of the set. In scenes such as Riddick's confrontation with the creature, Vin Diesel was literally fighting the operators moving the animatronic arms off camera. The film even used large quantities of blue blood during filming. Because it was not red, they could use it without affecting the age rating, which allowed violent attacks to be shown without censorship restrictions. The result was a perfect combination of practical and digital effects. The physical creatures provided weight, and the actors could interact with something solid with real texture and presence, while CGI allowed massive swarms and sequences that were very difficult to achieve with practical effects. Additionally, the film rarely shows them fully illuminated. They move in the shadows, appear in brief flashes, and attack quickly. This decision turned technical limitations into a narrative advantage and preserved the sense of threat, something that has made the creatures from this film age better than many other creatures from the early 2000s. Within the story, they also serve a very clear narrative function. They are not villains with motivations or creatures with complex intelligence. They are a force of nature, a reminder that the planet is the true enemy of the film. While the characters argue, hesitate, or betray one another, the Bioraptors simply act according to their biology. And with that, we've reached the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on the notification bell to stay up to date with all my new videos. I also want to give a special shout out to the channel members. Thanks to you and all of our viewers, we can keep diving into these kinds of disturbing and thought-provoking stories. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. And if you want to support the channel and get access to exclusive content, early videos, and other perks. I invite you to become a member. Just click the join button below this video. See you in the next one. Hey, don't go just yet. If you enjoyed this video, I've got another one I think you'll love. Check it out.